Hello, this is OverlordBou, and we're back with another information video with SAT score. Today, we'll be going over the new German Battlecruiser line for the Germans. So, we'll be reviewing the pros and cons of the line, with who would enjoy this line or who would not be recommended for, and we'll let SAT score going over the play style of the ship and tips and tricks at the end. So, let's look at the general building equipment. So, first off, it'll be main armament. I do take main armament since I have sometimes get trouble with my main guns being knocked out or having the torpedo tubes knocked out. I like this instead. But if you want to make sure the secondaries are never knocked out, take auxiliary armament modifications. It's a personal preference for each. For slot 2 would be hydroacoustics to make your sonar, the hydroacoustics plus 20% longer. Third slot will be secondary battery. Fourth slot will be steering modifications. Now you can take the steering or the propulsion. It's more of a personal preference. So if you're in a kiting position where you're trying to do more throttle juking, trying to dodge main battery shells, propulsion would be really nice. If you're at like a 4-speed and juke it to full, you're better at going to full speed, which allows you to juke more shells. Or for steering modifications, allows you to be able to dodge torpedoes more effectively when you're pushing in, being aggressive, pushing into a cap area or just pushing a flank. So that choice will be up to you there on how you're going to be playing the ship. Now, for the fifth slot is going to be concealment, and the final slot will be main battery modification. Now, for the commander build, I would recommend you use Lucian's, since he does have a wonderful perk where if you hit 100 secondary shells, it reduces the secondary fire and reload by 15%. So it buffs the secondaries when they're already really good. The build will be emergency repair specialist with IFHE, adrenaline rush, concealment, emergency repair expert, the manual secondary battery, and the long range secondary battery shells. Now, let's talk about the pros of the line. So, starting at the tier 7, at the Heimrich, you can start having the best secondary firepower of any battleship due to their very accurate and high HE pen secondaries. They also have excellent top speed with average turning and rudder shift, comparable to the French BBs without a speed boost. They also have very good concealment compared to other BBs, only second to the Royal Navy battleships. For the tier 8 and above, this synergizes with their high secondary range, as the enemy will be secondary range almost as soon as they are detected. So pretty much if we go look over at the Schlieffen real quick, this ship has a concealment of 12.6 and the secondary range is 12.5. So pretty much the moment that you're spotted, pretty much as soon as someone spots you, you are going to be within your secondary range. So you'll be able to start hammering down on them immediately. Unless, of course, it's like a DD that is going to be having a way better concealment than you. So it's best to try to be with a DD in front to help spot for that. Plus, with this line, you do get the Russian DCP, which makes them very resistant to fires for short fights, but suffers in long matches where if you use too much of the DCPs, you'll run out and then you won't build a DCP anything at all. Now, these ships do have a standard heal, but one less charge than other BBs. Again, worse survivability into the late game. Now, the cons of this line would be general poor survivability due to their low HP pool and bow and stern being overmatched by BB guns. As you can see, it does have a 60mm bow armor right here, but right here at the 27, battleships can easily pen this and do a lot of damage. And it's the same thing for the aft end as well. As you can see right here, it's 27. They can pen all the way up right here, which is not good at all. And right now, it does have 150s right here as well. So if you angle, they're much less likely to hit that spot. But if they do, they will get pen damage. Now, the main guns have a good performance at tier 7 and below, but are poor to mediocre at tier 8 and above, where the secondaries are a lot more reliant on. Now the ship, the whole BC line has very poor firepower. All of them will struggle against CVs. So if you are in a match against a CV that focuses you, you are going to suffer. Now, it is a very point-intensive line. You need all 21 points to make this to become truly effective. So that's why I would not recommend this ship for new players. The line is not forgiving of mistakes and heavily punishes over aggression. If you don't have a if you have a non-21 point captain along this and you're not able to utilize the ship's full potential. So it's definitely suffering with that. And I also would not recommend this line for passive players that like to do longer range engagements. The Battlecruisers are flat out inferior to other BBs past their secondary range. So if you try to do a long range engagement with this ship, you are going to lose. So that's why you have to be very reliant on the secondaries and your concealment. And of course, I would not recommend this ship if the players prefer to sit outside of the secondary most of the game. This line is not good for you if you like that. Now, people who would enjoy this ship, enjoy this line, would be veteran players looking for a unique but challenging playstyle. This line demands good situational awareness, timing on the attack to be successful, aggressive players who love to brawl their ships. The German Battlecruisers excels at pushing and running down other ships due to their speed and powerful secondaries. And also, co-op players will enjoy this line as they can easily tear through bots with ease. Now, while we have the replay of the match we have showing, I'll let SAT Score take it over on the playstyle and tips and tricks.
Alright, so we'll go over the general playstyle of the German Battlecruisers. So here we'll be using a Schlieffen as an example, as Schlieffen is the ultimate battleship in the line. Just keep in mind, the German Battlecruisers from the tiers 3 to 6 are actually placed very similar to their battleship counterparts. There isn't actually much changes in playstyle, so the following guide should only be applied to tier 8 ships and up. Heimrich is kind of that weird in-between battleship. She has good secondaries, but kind of struggles when she's up-tiered, so it kind of depends on the match. Alright, so starting at tier 8, the Battlecruiser line distinguishes itself from other battleships, having excellent secondaries, but relatively poor main gun firepower. In addition, they all carry slow but long-range torpedoes. Of the Battlecruisers, only Schlieffen actually can stealth torp. All other ships have their torp range ends just inside the battleship's detection. As a result, the German Battlecruisers are the most powerful, aggressive brawling ships in the game. So, if they don't tear everything apart with their secondaries, they can resort to a torpedo trade against battleships against any other ship. But this comes at the cost of their performance outside of secondary range, as their main guns will constantly let them down. So at the very start of the match, like all other ships, you should spend the first couple minutes assessing the enemy's strength, seeing where the enemy is strong, where they're weak. Because ideally, you want to go to a weak flank and kind of push in and use your secondaries to hammer them. Your main threats are actually torpedo-focused destroyers and CV spotting and attacks. You want to make special note of where they're going. In this match, the only destroyer they had was the Groningen, and although he spawned on this side, I was able to push him away with my Petropavlovsk and allow Bow to push in with the Schlieffen. So, if the enemy opposition is heavy or there's limited cover, then it is generally best to kite away and just hopefully create some opportunities or wait for some to arise. You still have your main guns, which allows you to be effective outside of secondary range, but it's not very consistent and it's worse than other battleships. So here we did encounter a couple more ships than we expected, so we kind of had to, we decided that the best way was to charge in. Bow does take a fair amount of damage, but he is able to tank for a little bit. Unlike the cruisers, the German battlecruisers can withstand some fire for a little bit of time. So we're just waiting for a good opportunity for him to turn away before he re-engages. So about right here, he finds a lull in the gap. There isn't any battleships shooting at him, so he has some time to run. Meanwhile, I radar to run on again, keep pushing him away, and let Bow just kind of stealth up. The German battlecruiser have excellent concealment except for the tier 7, so use this tier advantage when positioning. So Bow is able to get away. He'll go dark pretty soon. Meanwhile, I use this opening and push in with my Petro. So Schlieffen's aggressive playstyle complements certain cruisers pretty well. Like if you have another battleship, or in this case a Petro, to kind of help you tank the damage, then Schlieffen becomes extremely powerful. So, as you can tell, although he has 5 DCPs, he can use them in quick succession. So if he gets lit on fire several times, he can quickly DCP and try to prevent more damage. The lack of heals, I find, is going to be a bit more pressing because since you have only 4 heals instead of 5, you have to time your push in really well. You're not as good as other battleships in the long run because of that one loss of heal. So as a Schlieffen, you really want to find a time to commit in the early to mid game. If you're forced to wait till late game, usually you have expended all of your heals and you don't have much to kind of finish the game with. Alright, so since I'm stuck at the rock, I've actually pushed the destroyer away far enough that he cannot spot Bow. So now Bow is able to push back in. He's quickly trying to heal back everything. But otherwise, the enemy, I've created a very good opportunity for him. Once again, you can kind of pair the German battlecruisers with hopefully another tanky battleship, kind of let him take the grunt of the fire while you try to sneak into range and push him away. If that's not available, you can also try to use islands, or if you're div with a destroyer, you can have him give you a smoke, and that will lead to some especially nasty gameplay. So even though there's many targets for him to shoot at, it's actually a good idea. It's not always a good idea to fire your main guns. Firing your main guns, of course, breaks your detection, and since your guns aren't very good, it's oftentimes a good idea to actually remain stealthed up, especially since he's getting so close. So for the gun characteristics, I'd recommend mostly focusing on the ships that are notorious for having poor citadels. Minotaur, many British light cruisers, for example, the American cruisers, they're pretty well known to have vulnerable citadels. Also, battleships with raised citadels are a good target, but you may not be able to citadel them at longer ranges, like outside your secondary range. And also, while the German battlecruisers aren't very tanky, the tier 8 and tier 9, the lower tier should especially be careful because of their citadel placement. I've seen a lot of Zeitons and Ruperts take citadel damage if they get hit in the rear. So you make sure to angle properly. You don't need all of your secondaries if it means you get citadeled in the butt. And you don't want to be take battleship citadels when you have a low HP to start with. So here we see the Schlieffen's power just coming in handy. He's able to take on both battleships just because of his secondaries. He's using the island to try and negate some of the damage, while his secondaries just go to town with the two ships. And these secondaries, like, if you've played the German battleships before, you can think of it this way. The Schlieffen has roughly... The Schlieffen secondaries is about as good as 2 Kurfürst secondaries firing at you. That's how good it is. So if you can get into range of the enemy ships, they will absolutely tear them apart. The main challenge is to actually get him into range. So since Bo was able to sneak up, use that island as spotting cover, he was able to get in and just wreck the Kremlin and the other battleship north with his secondaries. Although he didn't use it much here, you do want to have your Hydra up when you're trying to push in. If you're anticipating torpedo threats. Once again, probably your biggest threat is actually torpedo-focused destroyers, because they will both spot your push and then hurt you with their torpedoes. The gunboats, they fare a little bit better against the gunboats because they have to remain outside range to attack you. And your multiple DCPs can take care of the fire damage if necessary. But the problem but if torpedoes come out your way, then they'll take a huge chunk of your HP if you're not careful. So, okay. So to just to simplify the playstyle, basically you want to find a good opportunity to push in and then let your secondaries wreak havoc on the enemy. If you're able to get to within your secondary range, you can you will tear enemy ships apart. But because of that, the Battlecruisers are one of the hardest lines to master because you have to time your push pretty well. If you do it too early, then you'll simply just die without doing any damage. And if you do it too late, then you won't do anything as well. So, but if you're able to master German battleship line, you will be able to consistently inflict damage as you basically run over your flank and hopefully win the game. Bo, do you have any final thoughts on the line?
So we've already talked about the tips. We've done the final thoughts, correct, or no? We haven't done the final thoughts.
How does the individual ships of the line perform?
So the tier 3 and 4 battle cruisers, they are good, while the tier 5 and 6 are mediocre to okay. The tier 7 Heimrich is considered the low point of the line, since this is where the secondaries start getting good, but they're not at their best yet.
They're not at their best, most because there's a problem with the concealment. Like, the Heimrich still has fairly high concealment, even though her secondaries don't have that range yet. And she's a tier 7 battleship, so she doesn't up tier very well.
Exactly. Now, the tier 8 Star Destroyer, this one is where the tier 8 secondaries really start to shine. This is a good tier. This is a good tier 8 battle cruiser. Now, the tier 9 and 10 is where the line really shines, and these two are the best out of the line. The Rupert and the Schlieffen are the two best out of the line, for sure. But is there anything else you think we should be adding? Or I think you covered up. I think we both covered up everything. So, what do you think?
If you decide to go up the Schlieffen line, I hope you enjoy it, because watching Bo play her, I think he really enjoyed his time.
Oh yeah, this is definitely, like, since I love playing brawling ships. this line has invigorated my drive to play more brawling ships, and so I really enjoy playing the whole Battlecruiser line overall. But yep, that is going to be it for today. If you guys have any questions or concerns about the whole Battlecruiser line, just let us know. Thank y'all for watching. If you guys have any questions or concerns, just leave them down in the comments down below. But this is OverlordBou and SAT Score, and we'll talk to y'all later. Oh, big stretch, dude. Oh, big stretch, yeah.